UFC Fight Night Adesanya versus Imavov takes place this Saturday, and we might have a changing of the guard. I got your quick picks coming up. Stay right here. What is going on, guys? Dino Bam Bam here with the 10-7 MMA. Happy to be back in your lives with another quick picks. After a week off, we come back to UFC Saudi Arabia, UFC Riyadh, fucking Riyadh season presents Saudi Arabia, presents Israel Adesanya versus Imavov. I don't know what the fuck they're calling it, but it's Riyadh season. It's always fucking Riyadh season, and we are back. And I'm glad to be back. We got 12 straight weeks of UFC coming up, and as a fucking diehard, unbelievable. I just love that shit. And speaking of that, you guys might as well just like and subscribe like the thing at the bottom says. 12 straight weeks. We're dropping 12 straight weeks of fucking nonstop content. Nonstop. We can't afford to stop. Like Moicano couldn't afford to lose, even though he did. We can't afford to fucking stop doing content. So just do your boys a favor. Like and subscribe. We're trying to hit that 1,000 milestone. It would mean a lot to me and DS if we can hit that 1,000 milestone. Now, addressing the thumbnail, I said retirement fight or some shit along those lines for Israel Adesanya. I think it's very possible, guys, and I'm going to get into that at the end when we get to the main event. If you don't want to wait that long, there's chapters. Just fucking fast forward, click on the main event. Hear my take on that. But besides the liking and subscribing, if you guys want to help us out some more, go follow us on Instagram at the107MMA, like the thing at the bottom says. Anyways, UFC Saudi Arabia, the quick picks episode. Look, guys, this is a themed card, right? Anytime the UFC travels outside of the United States, it seems like in the United States, here's what we get. We get fucking Apex cards, which are boring as shit for the most part. Then we get, our pay-per-views in Vegas, which are nice. And then we get like maybe one in Miami. We get the Madison Square Garden card in November. We don't get shit else in America anymore. We used to have nonstop cards. I know we have Seattle coming up, but it's like, let's start fucking traveling, guys. Chicago, we're thirsty. We're dying, right? There's a bunch of cities. Phoenix, it's been, God knows, 274 was the last time they were in Arizona. I specify those two because that's where I spend most of my time. But Texas, where are we at? We haven't been there in a minute. We used to go to, more than just Miami. We're doing Jacksonville. Where's the rest of the states? I know we did Utah and Colorado. Like, there's nothing else. There's fucking nothing else in America. I guess it's just like these 6-7 states. But anyways, anytime we travel out to these faraway lands, whether it's your Abu Dhabis or your Saudi Arabias or your Londons or Paris or Australia or wherever the fuck we go, we do a themed card, right? We get a lot of fighters from that region, and it makes sense. That's what you got to do. But we've got a themed card here. It's Saudi Arabia. A lot of fighters from the Arab world, a lot of fighters from the Muslim world on this card, as you would assume. So beware of that. Also, one more thing. If you're in the United States like we are here, this card starts at like 8 in the morning Central, so just check your fucking listings and make sure you do not miss it. Now, I'm going to click this thing that says like and subscribe, and we're going to move on to the first fight of the card, and that's Hamdy Abdelwahab versus Jamal Pogues. Waking up, 8 a.m., get some coffee, some sanctioned violence, watch these two fat fucks fucking fight each other. So let's start with Hamdy Abdelwahab, coming off of a 2-year suspension, guys. 2-year suspension for steroids. You look at this guy, and steroids is not the first thing you think. He's just like a fat dude, and, this is coming from a fat dude. I can say that. It's a fat guy, a heavy wrestler, and then it's just like, hey, steroids, 2-year suspension. Anyways, heavy wrestler, good power, nothing special on the feet. Honestly, didn't even look that great last time out and got popped for roids, right? So I don't know what the fuck that's about, but he is a heavy wrestler. He comes with like a national wrestling background. I believe he's Egyptian, but he wrestled for Iran in the Olympics or national championships or something like that. He's taken on another very mid-heavyweight and Jamal Pogues, just average, nothing too special, just a volume heavyweight, right? And the thing that he's lacking is the thing you hate to lack at heavyweight. Well, I guess chin would be the worst thing, but he doesn't have power, guys. He just doesn't have that kind of power. Last time out, we saw him taken down, kind of struggled when he was on his back. Not a good recipe. I'm seeing very close odds. It's basically a pick 'em. In Saudi Arabia, the pick has to be Hamdy Abdelwahab, right? He's going to have the judges in his corner. He's going to have this wrestling, this wrestling style. I think he's going to get 1 or 2, maybe 3 takedowns in this fight, and that's going to be enough to sway the judges for him. Hometown judges coming off a suspension for roids. Hamdy Abdelwahab is a pretty free pick for me here, guys. Minus 112. Love the odds. I think he wins a decision fight. Controversial, maybe. Moving on. We've got Bogdan Grad. and he's taking on Lucas Alexander. Two guys that I don't necessarily think are UFC level. I mean, both of these guys are very low level. If they are UFC level, they're like bottom of the barrel. But anyways, Bogdan Grad, a slow, methodical fighter, pretty well-rounded, right? Some good output, some good volume. When he gets fighters to the ground, he has some really good control. He's very well-rounded, doesn't really stick out anywhere, doesn't seem to have too much power, but has a ton of finishes. Just like a tough fighter to really get a read on. I don't think he's phenomenal anywhere, just pretty good most places. He's taking on Lucas Alexander. Now, if you look at these two and you just watch like a little bit of film on this guy, little bit of film on this guy, Lucas Alexander, super damn flashy, right? Super exciting looking striker, crazy power, looks the part way more than Bogdan Grad does. And I mean that in the fighting sense and just like physically, just looks more like a fighter than Bogdan Grad. I just don't know that he's that good of a fighter. I mean, we've seen him lose in the UFC, so he has some UFC experience, but I don't know, man. Lucas Alexander seems to be a guy that has the tools, but he's not very high IQ and just makes some stupid mistakes. So without thinking, with me thinking either one of these guys is really not UFC level, I'm just going to go with Bogdan Grad. That's my guess. Maybe a late TKO. He seems to find those, or most likely a decision. Not going based off too much of this. It's very low level UFC MMA. So I wouldn't part money with this, but I'm going Bogdan Grad by decision. Now, we get on to a pretty fun fight, the first women's fight in UFC history in Saudi Arabia. Maybe MMA history. I don't know if they've had women's fights there, but it's the first UFC women's fight in Saudi Arabia, and it's a damn good one. We got Jasmine Jasudavicius. She's taking on Mayra Bueno Silva. Guys, Jasmine Jasudavicius, hot as hell right now. I don't mean physically. I just mean she's on a fucking tear, right? 3 fights in a row. Absolute beast wrestler, been wrestling since she was a child. Great control when she gets fights to the ground, aggressive on top. On the feet, she's nothing special, but she is improving every time we see her. It's getting better. But the thing with Jasmine Jasudavicius is, at the end of the day, the recipe is ragdolling these girls, right? And she's been able to do that to a lot of these girls. I think she is a top 10, maybe a top 5 level fighter. But she's getting her biggest test to date yet in Mayra Bueno Silva, a tough veteran. Fought for the title just a year ago, right? I feel like we forget. People forget, man, that whole fucking thing. People forget because Mayra Bueno Silva just last year in February, by the way, I picked Raquel Pennington to win that fight. We're over 70% here. So do like the thing at the bottom says like and subscribe. This is where you get really damn good input. But Mayra Bueno Silva fought for a title less than a year ago, guys. Less than a year ago. She was expected to win that fight. She was the favorite. She goes on to lose that. When she loses her next fight due to a pretty bad cut, and then everyone just fucking gives up on Mayra Bueno Silva. She's trash. She has no dog in her. She has no type of cardio. I don't know if that's the case, man. She's big as shit for the division. She's tough. She's got great finishing ability. She's got really damn good jiu-jitsu, and that could come into play against a heavy grappler in Jasmine Jasudavicius, who's facing their toughest opposition yet. So Mayra's a big girl. She's a tested veteran. She's fought multiple world champions. She's fought for a world championship. I'm seeing her as a plus 185 here. And to be honest with you, I'm loving that, man. I just think her jiu-jitsu could pose a threat in this fight. And I think on the feet, she's definitely better than Jasmine Jasudavicius with more power. So give me Mayra Bueno Silva, the underdog here at plus 185 by decision. And we can move on to the next fight of the night. And that's going to be Fares Ziam versus Mike Davis. I think this is an absolute fucking banger of a fight, guys. Fares Ziam, just sort of a long-bodied striker, right? That typical French savate style, long, rangy, likes to poke at his opponents, kind of has this like reputation of being a very boring fighter. But last time out, man, got a highlight reel finish against Matt the Steamroller Frevola. Absolutely fucking disgusting. He turned up the volume in that one and then found a highlight reel finish. And that was really impressive for him. How much do we rate that win, right? Because I really think that's what it comes down to. If you think that Fares Ziam has improved, like that showed his improvements, and he's going to continue to improve at that rate, he's a good pick here at plus money. But he's taking on Mike Davis, man. In my personal opinion, one of the most underrated fighters in the fucking UFC. Absolute beast, man. Phenomenal power, good striking, great wrestling. The problem with him is he's always injured, man. The guy's super inactive, always hurt, always having to wait a year, year and a half in between fights. And it's a fucking shame because I think if Mike Davis was, a little more active, he says he doesn't want to be too active, but if he was fighting twice a year, this is a guy that would be in the rankings, man. And I think he can contend with a lot of guys in that 15 to like 8-9 range. So, look, I'm going Mike Davis by finish. I think he's too aggressive for Fares Ziam. I think it's very possible that he finds himself a TKO to ground and pound in this fight. So that's what I'm going to go with. I think Ziam is a good underdog, though, right? If you're looking for value, there's probably some good value here at plus 130, especially if the fight goes the distance. The judges in these faraway lands tend to be fucking biased. And I think if we go 3 rounds, it's possible that Fares Ziam can, edge out a close controversial decision. But I just think the world of Mike Davis, man. I think minus 155 is pretty damn good odds, and I got to trust them. So give me Mike Davis round 3 TKO. Moving on. Now here's a tough one. Friend of the channel, guys. Terrance McKinney, and he is taking on Damir Hadzovic. Now you look at the minus 455 Terrance McKinney, and it looks like minus 455. Like, this guy's got to win the fucking fight. The problem with Terrance McKinney is something that we all know. It's no surprise, right? Terrance McKinney, when it comes to skills, skill for skill, like power, wrestling, everything. He's got everything. He's only 30 years old. He's got everything that you would want an MMA fighter to have. And I'm talking about like at the high level. Like Terrance McKinney, if he didn't have the 2 problems that he has, would be a top 5 guy in the UFC, but he has 2 very, very fucking gaping holes. Pause. He has 2 like massive flaws in his game, and that's the cardio, and of course that's the chin. Now, he tends to get most of his finishes in the first round, right? He's either going to finish you in the first round or you're going to end up finishing Terrance McKinney. It's feast or famine. It's fucking whatever you want to call it, right? Do or die. And that's a problem to me. When you're a guy that's taken so much damage at such a young age, again, he's only 30 and he's taking this damage pre-30. It's tough to watch. It's tough to watch a guy so skilled, so fucking talented, so explosive, so athletic, have no cardio, have no chin. Like the cardio you can work on. Go figure it out. The chin, you can't really blame the guy, but just be more defensively sound. He's taking on Damir Hadzovic, a guy who's approaching 40 years old, not a very dynamic fighter. He's just a solid, well-rounded, okay everywhere kind of guy. Look, I can't pick him in this fight. I have to go with Terrance McKinney at minus 455. Yes, it looks like free cheese. The pick is Terrance McKinney, first round knockout. That's what it should be. But he's Kevin Holland, right? He's that level of unreliable. He's one of those guys that you can never bet on, and it's a fucking shame. But I think the UFC knows what they're doing. I think they gave him a guy that he's better than everywhere, a guy that isn't very dangerous, doesn't have very much finishing ability. So T-Rex by finish is the pick here. Cannot justify spending any money on Terrance McKinney, guys. I just can't do it. Moving on. Shamil the Blob Gaziev, guys. Shamil the Blob. He's taking on Thomas Petersen. Shamil Gaziev, big boy, massive, decent fighter, guys. Solid striking, solid power, decent wrestling, all that. Last time out, it was impressive. We got to see the cardio improvement from him. Because the knock on Shamil Gaziev after he fought Jarzinho Rozenstruik was, this guy's a fucking fraud. This guy's a loser. He's fat as shit, has no cardio. Then he showed us he can go 3 hard rounds last time out, right? It wasn't like the most frantic pace, but he did it, and he got himself a win, so that was good to see for him. He's taking on Thomas Petersen, just a tough guy, not so skilled heavyweight, right? Just one of those fat dudes at heavyweight that's sort of young, sort of well-rounded, has a wrestling background. Nothing special. I think Shamil Gaziev is miles ahead of Thomas Petersen. I don't expect Shamil Gaziev to be a world beater. I don't expect him to be a top 5, top 10 guy in the UFC, but he is better than Thomas Petersen. Minus 380. If this goes to the scorecards, which again, I expect it to, Shamil Gaziev is going to be the clear winner. There's no way they don't give him a decision there. So I think Shamil Gaziev by decision is free cheese. Shamil Gaziev minus 380 is free cheese. Decision probably would be my pick. Now moving on. Muhammad Naimov, guys. He's taking on Kaan Ofli. Muhammad Naimov of MMA Guru fame. If you guys have seen the MMA Guru video where he's talking about cheating and the whole Middle East and all that bullshit, this was the guy. This was the main culprit of fucking cheating. Eye pokes, nut shots, fence grabs, all that. He's willing to fucking do it. He's willing to cheat. And yeah, that's Muhammad Naimov, guys. I mean, a good wrestler, right? Solid grappler, solid striker, decent power, pretty damn athletic, just well-rounded, pretty damn good everywhere, but he cheats. That's his shtick. He's taking on Kaan Ofli, the guy that lost in the Ultimate Fighter finale to Myron Santos, got absolutely fucking slumped in that badly. He's a good jiu-jitsu practitioner, but he suffers with that thing, guys, that a lot of these jiu-jitsu guys suffer with, right? He doesn't really have wrestling. Now, when you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner, I don't understand why wrestling isn't your main focus. Like, you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Awesome. You need people on the ground to fucking do jiu-jitsu for the most part, right? In a nutshell. Why the fuck are you not working on getting people to the ground if you're that much better than them? Kaan Ofli, not a great wrestler. It's okay. Decent power on the feet. He's got like a short, stocky frame, right? Which is what gives him that power. It's like that explosive power. But it also kind of hinders him. Like, being a jiu-jitsu guy, you would think like black belt jiu-jitsu, a jiu-jitsu specialist. You want to be long, lanky, like wiry. And he doesn't have that. Look, I don't think very highly of him. I don't think he's long for the promotion. I think this is free cheese Muhammad Naimov here. He's going to be the better wrestler. He's going to be the better striker. I could see him finding a KO late. I'll ultimately stick with decision, but this is Muhammad Naimov all the fucking way. Moving on to the next fight of the night, we've got Saeed, not Habib's cousin, Nurmagomedov, taking on Loke Dog Vinicius Oliveira. Saeed Nurmagomedov, guys, long-bodied striker. Yeah, he's a striker. His last name's Nurmagomedov, but he's not a wrestler. He's a fucking long-bodied striker. Not related to Habib, as I mentioned. That being said, he does have dangerous jiu-jitsu, right? So I know I said he's not a wrestler, but he is a jiu-jitsu practitioner in a lot of ways. He has like a special finishing move. He has a lot of finishes with the guillotine, and that seems to be his go-to. He's got like long, skinny arms. He can lock it up pretty damn quickly. He's fast with it, man. And on the feet, quick, rangy, like pokes really well with his jabs and his kicks. And he's got some surprising power. He's taken on Vinicius Oliveira, my personal winner of Knockout of the Year last year over that filthy-ass switch knee versus Bernardo Sopai. He went on to dominate Ricky Simón after that fight, guys, and had himself a great year. He's a Brazilian, so his jiu-jitsu should be solid, but really what sticks out about him is his striking. He's very fun. He's very flashy. He's very powerful, aggressive as hell. Vinicius Oliveira is a fun-ass fighter. Now, in this fight, I'm going to lean towards Saeed Nurmagomedov, especially, again, with the fight being in Saudi Arabia. I don't want to keep, like harping on that, but I think if these fights, a lot of them, if they go to decision and they're close, they're going to give it to the hometown guy. That's what history says. The numbers are on that side. So I have to trust that. Now, can Saeed Nurmagomedov find a finish? Absolutely. Can Vinicius Oliveira find himself a finish? Absolutely. I think this is going to be a fucking banger. I think this is like a low-key potential fight of the night. Again, I just think it's going to be really close through 3 rounds, and whichever way, if it's close, it's going to Saeed. So split decision. Saeed Nurmagomedov is the pick. Now, we've got a very interesting fight at heavyweight, guys. Sergei Pavlovich, and he is taking on Biggie Boy, Jarzinho Rozenstruik. Sergei Pavlovich, an absolute beast of a man, stupid big, stupid power. Even though he's on a 2-fight losing streak at this point, to me, Sergei Pavlovich is the most dangerous heavyweight on the roster, potentially on the planet, right? Maybe Francis Ngannou is a little more dangerous than he is, with the pure power at this point. But I think Sergei Pavlovich is stupid scary, right? Now, we look at his last 2 fights. He lost to Tom Aspinall in that interim title fight. That fight was always 50-50, guys. I said it back then. I will continue to hold that. I think it was a 50-50 fight the entire time. It was really about which one of these 2 fucking behemoth powerhouses is going to land that big shot first. It happened to be Tom Aspinall. I think if you play that fight out 100 times, it's damn near 50-50, to be honest with you. And then that last fight was really concerning against Alexander Volkov. He got pieced the fuck up by Alexander Volkov. I mean, Volkov was eating him up with the jab. He was staying at range. He was never entering the pocket. He was keeping him at distance with that jab, just poking and picking at him. And this might sound like coping, and I'm not like the biggest Sergei Pavlovich fan, so I'm not coping, but it just seemed like he wasn't there that night, right? Like he wasn't fully there. He wasn't mentally turned on in that fight. Either way, he got absolutely picked apart. He's taking on Jarzinho Biggie Boy Rozenstruik, a longtime UFC veteran, a long past in Muay Thai, a mainstay of the division, right? Just your quintessential gatekeeper of that top 10. He doesn't have the power that he once used to have, but he's still got some decent power, good volume, absolutely filthy, crispy counter striking. He's patient as hell. He has some good cardio for a dude that looks the way he does, the ability to go 5 rounds. So it's nice to see out of Jarzinho Rozenstruik. Now, a lot of people are huge on Jarzinho this weekend as an underdog. I just don't see it, right? I think Alexander Volkov showed us the way to beat Sergei Pavlovich. It's stay long, poke at him with the jab, never let him get in. And you have to factor in a couple things. Alexander Volkov, a very, very tall guy. Jarzinho, not that tall. Pavlovich is going to be the taller fighter here. Another thing, Volkov trained with Sergei Pavlovich. They have a history of training with each other. So this is a guy that he knows. He knows how he fights. He knows what works against him. And he was able to just capitalize on the night. You have to pump the shit out of that jab. And I think Jarzinho does have the ability to do that. But again, he's not quite as rangy as Alexander Volkov. Not quite as rangy. He's not nearly as rangy as Alexander Volkov. So to me, Sergei Pavlovich is faster. He's bigger. I think he's stronger. He's more powerful. I think he's going to land, and if he lands, it's going to be fucking brutal. So I'm going Pavlovich, round 2 KO, and I'm pretty confident in it. I don't get all the love for Jarzinho this weekend. I mean, I love Jarzinho Rozenstruik. I think he's an awesome fighter. I just don't see it, guys. To me, this one's wild that people are picking Jarzinho Rozenstruik. Sergei Pavlovich, I think, clears in this fight. Now, we move on to the co-main event of the evening, a very interesting fight, as Shara Bullet Magomedov takes on Michael Venom Page, MVP. Now, the Shara Bullet hype train is fucking just, it's going right now, guys. It is absolutely on fire, fucking full steam ahead, momentum, all that bullshit, especially after that last fight. He had the filthy, viral, fucking double spinning back elbow, back fist, whatever you want to call it, knockout against Armen Petrosyan. And the hype couldn't be bigger, right? He's a very technical striker, some okay power. I think a lot has been made of Shara Bullet's power, and I don't think it's necessarily true. He's got some power. He had a ton of finishes on the regional scene. Yes, he has finishes in the UFC, but it's not that fucking power that maybe we thought he has. Just a pure stand-up technician, powerful kicks, super unorthodox striking. Being Dagestani, it's ironic as hell because he has absolutely zero in terms of grappling. He's taken on the veteran, seasoned veteran, Michael Venom Page, MVP. When it comes to pure striking, guys, it's hard to find a highlight reel similar to Michael Venom Page's. I guess the only comparison is Wonder Boy. That's like the only comparison that makes sense. I know it sounds like cliche. It sounds fucking like, just like the low-hanging fruit or whatever. But that's the only comparison you can make. And he might be more dynamic than Wonder Boy. I don't think he's as good as Stephen Thompson ever was. But MVP is an absolute fucking beast. Crazy highlight reel. Lightning fast moving in and out. Keeps his hands down. He's got that wide leg style. When he jumps in, guys, he pops off a 1-2 and he gets the fuck out. It's crazy. It's crazy seeing a dude that big, that long, that tall, just like darting in and out that fucking fast. It's honestly wild. He's a sniper. And I think what really should, like solidify that, if you need that to be solidified, is that last fight versus Ian Gary. Now, I know the MMA community has a lot of people are wishy-washy on Ian Gary, right? He's a cuck and fucking took his wife's last name or whatever the fuck it is. Like, whatever. Ian Gary's a good fighter, right? We can all admit that. He's a top 5 level guy at the division. And Michael Venom Page was kind of picking him apart on the feet. And for what it's worth, Ian Gary is more so now known as a striker than anything. Yes, he came in as a grappler, but if you ask most people, they're going to say he's a striker. And MVP was picking his ass apart. Ian Gary needed to wrestle in that fight, and he did. And that's what ended up winning him the fight. But really impressive by Michael Venom Page, especially at his age, and being a guy that did, that had the majority of his career in Bellator, right? He was never a guy that, like, nobody ever thought that highly of MVP. He was in Bellator, he was doing his thing, he was undefeated, he was knocking people out. But there's always like that, like, okay, come do it in the UFC, you'd get your ass whooped. Not the case. He's hanging with the best guys in the world at this age. So I really think MVP would have been a top 5 guy if he came in his prime. Anyways, I expect this fight to stay on the feet. If anyone tries to shoot in this fight, I expect it'll be Shara Bullet. And even if he does shoot, I don't think he's going to get the takedowns. Even if he gets the takedowns, I don't think he's going to be able to stay on top. MVP has been doing a lot of grappling competitions as of late, so he's working on it. So to me, this fight stays on the feet for 15 minutes. I have to go with who I think the better striker is. And to me, unequivocally, that's Michael Venom Page. He is the better striker. I don't think anyone can doubt that. So maybe Father Time comes knocking and MVP's just fucking done all of a sudden, because that happens pretty fast. Maybe his chin is shit. I don't know. I think MVP wins this fight. I can see him finishing Shara Bullet late in the third. I will go decision. Now, again, I know I've been saying decisions. You tend to go with the hometown guy, and the UFC wants Shara Bullet to win this fight. Don't get it twisted. And if the judges have a way of doing that, they're going to give it to Shara Bullet. But for what it's worth, MVP recently converted to Islam, so he's Muslim as well. So, like, who the fuck knows? I'm going MVP by decision. I'm sticking with it. I think it's a good pick. I just don't think Shara Bullet is the guy we think he is. That Diaz said it very well. If you guys paid attention to the last time Shara Bullet fought, he said it's coming soon for Shara Bullet. I don't expect it to be this fight against Petrosian, but within the next one or two, he's going to run into a guy that's at another level, and he's going to get exposed. And I think this is that level. So Michael Venom Page by decision, potential knockout. I will be sprinkling on that. Now, moving on to the main event of the evening. Again, I'm a fan. I got the shirt. We got him on the fucking poster here and here and here. And yeah, it's my boy, Israel Adesanya, the last style bender. He's taking on Nassourdine Imavov. Guys, love him or hate him, Israel Adesanya, one of the GOATs of the sport. Definitely a GOAT of the middleweight division. It's him or Anderson Silva. Nobody else is really in that conversation as of right now. What Israel Adesanya did at 185 pounds is going to go down in history as one of the best runs in UFC history. It just is. An absolute master of striking technique. At times, Israel Adesanya has been known to be boring, right? Because he picks at range, he does all that shit, and he doesn't really go for finishes oftentimes when he probably could. He like plays with his food. As he's literally as skilled as it gets in the kickboxing. This is a guy, think about it, that knocked out Alex Pereira, okay? This is the guy that knocked out Poatan in the UFC. And over their course of 4 fights, was winning the majority of the rounds in those 4 fights. Yes, he's 1-3 with a fucking, 1 knockout loss, like a pure out cold knockout. Another fight in the UFC where he was TKO'd in the 5th of a fight he was winning. He outstruck Alex Pereira. That's who Israel Adesanya is. Now, the thing is, we have to take a look at these last 2 fights for Israel Adesanya, right? A lackluster performance against Sean Strickland, losing his belt to Sean Strickland, and then getting the title fight against DDP last time out. Now, against Strickland, it seemed to me like Israel Adesanya gave up on himself in that fight. I think he got hurt in that first round. Sean Strickland dropped him. And I think after that point, we only saw Adesanya try 1 round after that. That's my opinion. That's how I saw it. I think it was more of a case of like, damn, he underestimated Sean Strickland, did not think this guy had the power to put him out. He dropped him. Adesanya got worried and decided, you know what, let's live to fight another day. Let's pack it the fuck in. And he spent the majority of that fight just running away from Sean Strickland. Also, stylistically, Sean Strickland, a tough matchup for Adesanya, right? A guy that's constantly pushing forward. Adesanya likes to operate with some space and dictate. Sean Strickland just never allowed for that. I just think it was an Adesanya that was off. Now, that last fight versus Dricus du Plessis is very telling. Now, I think prime for prime, Israel Adesanya, like if Izzy was in his prime, I think he wins that fight against DDP. What happened was on the feet, in my opinion, again, he was outstriking DDP. He was outstriking him. He was leading he was landing the more damaging shots. He was kind of putting a clinic on him. But what happened is as that fight progressed, Dricus du Plessis did what he does, and that's push the pace. That's be really damn aggressive and sloppy and going for takedowns and just kind of out-cardioed Israel Adesanya. Maybe cardio is the wrong word, but he just kind of like just outpaced him. And it got to a point where it was overwhelming and a mistake happened. And DDP got the fucking choke. I'm not saying DDP's choke was a mistake. I'm just saying Adesanya made a mistake and DDP capitalized on it. So the question really is which Izzy are we looking at? Are we looking at the Izzy from 2 fights ago, 3 fights ago? Are we looking at the Izzy from the last fight? They're very different Israel Adesanyas. The real question is he done? But anyways, he's taken on Nassourdine Imavov, a very good technical striker. Not too much power on the feet, not too much anything, honestly. Just very well-rounded and pretty damn good everywhere. Impressive performance last time out versus Brendan Allen, who struggled to get takedowns against him, right? So Nassourdine Imavov, the question with his, French-style kickboxing as well, the question was, how's his grappling? Yes, he's Dagestani. His name ends in OV, but we hadn't seen too much grappling from him. Looked pretty damn good against Brendan Allen, who is a grappler. So again, this comes down to the one thing for me, right? Prime for prime, no brainer. Israel Adesanya wins the shit out of this fight 10 out of 10 times. The question is, what percent of Israel Adesanya are we getting? If 100% was Izzy's prime, are we getting an 80% Israel Adesanya? Are we getting a 60, 50% Israel Adesanya? Because I think if we're getting the 80% Adesanya, he wins this fight. I start to question it if we're at that like 60 to 70 range. So look, yes, he's slowed down. You could tell from that DDP fight that Izzy has slowed down a little bit. Is Father Time knocking on the fucking door? Is he here? That's the question. So I'm going to say no. I'm an Israel Adesanya fan. As you guys can see, again, I've said it a bunch of fucking times. I think he wins this fight. I think he puts on a masterclass versus Nassourdine Imavov. I'm going to go 49-46 decision for Izzy. And I think he's just going to remind us that there's levels to this shit. Now, with that being said, I promised you guys this, right? I promised you this at the beginning. And that's what we do here. We promise and we deliver. We promise and we deliver. Retirement fight. Is that what's going on for Israel Adesanya? It's very possible. To me, guys, it's very damn possible, okay? Now, if Israel Adesanya loses this fight to Nassourdine Imavov, which is very possible, okay? I think, I would put it at 60-40 Izzy, in my opinion. So if he does lose this fight, especially if he loses by finish or he gets like dominated, outclassed, like to the point where he really just couldn't keep up with Nassourdine Imavov, I think this might be the last time we see Israel Adesanya, because at that point, what does he have to fight for? He's going to be as far away from the belt as he's ever been in the UFC. And, the Pereira fight is not going to be within reach. There's really no other massive fights at 85. He's kind of cleaned out the division besides, I guess, for Sean Strickland and DDP. And he's not getting those rematches if he doesn't win this fight. He'll be on a 3-fight skid. Israel Adesanya, to me, is not going to be one of those guys that overstays his welcome. I think once it goes for Israel Adesanya, he has the respect and the maturity for the sport of mixed martial arts and for himself, to be honest with you, to walk the fuck away. He's not going to let himself be a Tony Ferguson. He's not going to let himself be one of those guys that's, losing to up-and-comers. That's not his shtick. He has a lot of respect for himself and what he's done. So ultimately, is this his retirement fight? I don't think so, because I think he's going to win. But if he loses, I think there's like an 85% chance that this is the last time we see the last style bender in the octagon. So anyways, guys, that was it. I'm sorry if I was long-winded or whatever the fuck. But UFC Saudi Arabia this Saturday should be an absolute banger. Wake up, set your alarms, drink your coffee, and watch some sanctioned fucking violence. Anyways, guys, I'm Dino Bam Bam. This was the 10-7 MMA. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.